Okay, so this is the Math 3 Statistics project by Jayce, Ethan, and Utkrisht. So our question was, how many times a week do you eat fast food? So we surveyed the school on how many times a week they ate fast food. So we compared underclassmen and upperclassmen, and our conjecture was that underclassmen eat fast food more times a week than upperclassmen. So our measures of central tendency after getting the data where the underclassmen's mean was 1.714 times a week, the mode was 1, the median was 1, and the standard deviation was 1.485. For the upperclassmen, the mean was 2.75, the median was 3, the mode was 1, and the standard deviation was 1.902. Here are some graphs comparing the data. They're both histograms, one more detailed than the other. This one compares girls and boys with the under and upperclassmen, for each gender. So, and this is a less detailed one that just has the underclassmen and upperclassmen. Also here, the standard deviation is shown. So this, as far as this line goes up, that's the standard deviation. So you'll notice that the upperclassmen in both graphs tend to eat more fast food than the underclassmen, especially the girls. So yeah. So here's our box and whisker plot. You can see the minimum here at 0 for both of them. The first quartile at 1. For the underclassmen, the median was 2. Upperclassmen is going to be 3. Maximum, sorry, not the median was 2 for underclassmen. That's the maximum. So the median, so yeah, and the upperclassmen's maximum about at 5. You got not maximum, third quartile, sorry, and maximum underclassmen 6, maximum upperclassmen 7. So you'll notice that the upperclassmen's data is more widely spread out. It takes up more of the data in between the minimum and maximum. So that's we're gonna talk more than compared to the underclassmen, who their maximum is just way above the third quartile. So we'll talk more about that later. So here are our normal distribution curves. This is the underclassmen one. The mean was 1.714. So you can see the middle is right about here, right behind the 2, where 1.714 is. Standard deviation is 1.485. For the upperclassmen, the mean is 2.75. So you can see it's a little behind the 4. Where 2.7, not behind the 4. Well, yeah, behind the 4. Behind the 3, sorry. Where 2.75 is. Standard deviation is 1.902. So here's our margin of error. So our margins of error. So we calculated the margins of error for the underclassmen and upperclassmen's data. The underclassmen, their margin of error turned out to be 9.8%, and the upperclassmen's turned out to be 17.1%. Here's our calculations, our work for figuring out the margin of error. This is the underclassmen's over here. So for both of them, we just use the margin of error form, insert the values into the equation, which you can see right here, and crunch the numbers. So this is just the process of crunching the numbers, and that's the final result. Same for the upperclassmen. Form, insert values, crunch numbers. There you go. 9.8% and 17.1%. So you'll notice the upperclassmen's margin of error is a little bit high, which we'll also talk about later. Not like ridiculously high, but a little bit. So here's our probability problem. So we decided that we would ask, what is the probability that an underclassman or upperclassman at RTHS eats fast food 4 or more times a week? That's because the maximum number of times somebody ate fast food a week at RTHS, in our data anyway that we use, was 7 times. So we kind of found a midpoint between that. So 3 or less or 4 or more. So we decided to see how many people ate a considerable amount. So 4 or more. So for the underclassmen, it was 1 out of 14, and the upperclassmen, it was 1 out of 14. So, which is not very much. And the upperclassmen, they ate fast food 4 or more times a week, 2 out of 7 times, which is a little more. So about 7.1% of the underclassmen population at RTHS eats fast food 4 or more times a week, and about 28.6% of the upperclassmen population at RTHS eats fast food 4 or more times a week, which is actually about 4 times as much as the underclassmen. And here's our work over here. It's pretty small, but you can zoom in and see it if you need to. It's here's we counted how many data points were 3 or less and how many were 4 or more for both of them. Then we added them up to get the whole sample size for the probability, at least for like the underclassmen and upperclassmen, not like the entire sample size, which was 56, but it was 28 for both because there were 28 underclassmen, 28 upperclassmen. And here's our original form of the probability problem for the underclassmen. Put the number of ways the event we're looking for can occur at the top as the numerator, and the number of possible outcomes in total at the bottom, 2 out of 28. Simplify that, you get 1 out of 14. Same process for the upperclassmen. So, so there's 4 more, so 8 that were 4 or more, put 8 over 28, simplify that, you get 2 over 7. So here are some interesting facts and discoveries that we learned while doing this study. So one was that the upperclassmen girls and the upperclassmen boys, to a small degree, reported that they eat fast food more often than the underclassmen. So this might be because many upperclassmen have their own cars, so they spend more time driving around and therefore are more likely to eat fast food, because that's when fast food is usually eaten. When you're driving around, you need to get something to eat pretty quick. Another interesting fact was that 24 out of 28, or 85.7% of underclassmen ate fast food at least once per week, and 25 out of 28, or 89.3% of upperclassmen ate fast food at least once per week. So the fact that the difference in percentage, so the fact that the difference in how many people like actually ate fast food at all was only 1, that shows that it's not a matter of whether or not people are eating fast food at all. Usually, it's not a matter of whether or not people are eating fast food at all, but rather it's a matter of how much people are eating it. So the upperclassmen tend to, when they do eat it, they eat fast food a lot more than the underclassmen, which we can see with the maximum here, and the more like data being closer to the maximum. So the upperclassmen's data, for the third fact, the upperclassmen's data had a more consistently wide range than the underclassmen, which I just talked about. So the highest number in the underclassmen's data was very far above the third quartile, which kind of shows that the upperclassmen have more varying eating habits than the underclassmen. So the underclassmen kind of tend to stay in the same group of numbers and how many times a week they eat fast food. But the upperclassmen, like, they kind of were just all over the place. So the next fact kind of ties into that. So the underclassmen students ate mostly 1 to 3 times a week, which isn't too much for fast food. 1 isn't very much. So the margin of error of the upperclassmen was higher than that of the underclassmen. So that's something to consider when making your conclusion. Is that since the margin of error was a little high, you might have a little bit of a problem with your data, which I'll talk about in a second. So our conclusion, right here, our conjecture was that the underclassmen at RTHS eat fast food more times a week than the upperclassmen. After looking at our results, it turned out our conjecture was incorrect because the upperclassmen at RTHS eat fast food more times a week than the underclassmen. So some reasons for this. How we decided on this was that one of them, the main reason, was the average number of times fast food was eaten per week was higher in the upperclassmen. It was 2.75, and the underclassmen average was 1.714. Also, deeper analysis of the data showed that upperclassmen who eat fast food eat more than underclassmen do. So, so they're going to be eating more frequently when they do, and they eat fast food at all about the same amount of times as the underclassmen do, but they're going to be doing it a lot more. But one thing to consider though is that the margin of error was a bit high in the upperclassmen, so there might have been some error in the data. A way to lessen this would be to use a larger sample size. Using a larger sample size always reduces the margin of error. So, thank you for watching, and that is our video. Bye.